So, today we're diving into a modern ghost story, one that's become this absolutely bone-chilling legend in a small Indian village called Belpur. And what's so fascinating about this one is that it starts with a very real, very human tragedy and ends with a supernatural question that, well, it just echoes through the night.
Just think about that question for a second. Have you ever heard of a mother who searches for her children even after death? This is the absolute heart of the legend. It's the thing villagers whisper to each other after dark, and, it's this one haunting idea that really sets the stage for everything that comes next. So let's go to Belpur. I mean, during the day, it's just like any other ordinary village. But when the sun goes down, that's when things change. Locals will tell you that a woman's spirit appears under this big peepal tree. And they say her grief is so strong, so palpable, it literally chills the air around her.
But here's the thing. To really get this ghost story, you have to understand the woman she was before she became a ghost. Her name was Anjali, and her life, well, let's just say living with her husband Raghuveer and his family, it was a complete nightmare long before she ever died.
Yeah, for years, Anjali's suffering all boiled down to one single agonizing thing. In a society where a woman's value is so often tied to her ability to have children, especially a son, Anjali couldn't get pregnant. And this wasn't just a private heartache for her. Oh no. For her husband's family, it made her a failure, a burden. She wasn't family anymore. She was a target.
And we're not talking about just one bad day or a single cruel comment. This was a daily, systematic dismantling of her soul. Her in-laws were constantly telling her she was worthless. The village gossiped behind her back. And her husband, Raghuveer, he'd come home drunk and just beat her. She was totally alone, trapped in that house by this wall of silence and abuse.
But through all of that, can you imagine, she held on to this one desperate hope. It was the single thought that got her through the beatings, through the insults. She thought, if I can just have a baby, maybe it'll all stop. Maybe then they'll finally see me as a human being. And then, after all those years of praying and pain, something that felt impossible actually happens. This is the moment the whole story pivots, where everything is about to change. Anjali finds out she's pregnant. Just try to imagine the sheer relief she must have felt. I mean, for the first time in 5 years, she probably looked in the mirror and saw a real smile. She truly thought, this is it. My life is finally going to change. My prayers have been answered.
But that hope was just shattered. Almost immediately. Her family's reaction wasn't just cruel, it was cold. It was calculated. They couldn't have cared less about her, or even about the new life she was carrying. To them, she was just an incubator, a vessel they could use to get an heir and then, just throw away once she'd served her purpose.
I mean, look at the gap between what she hoped for and what she got. It's just devastating. She was hoping for maybe some better food, a little rest, maybe just a tiny bit of acceptance, but instead, the abuse just kept going. They overworked her, fed her scraps, and her own health started to fall apart, even as this new life was growing inside of her.
It actually got so bad that a doctor gave her this really stark warning. He told her the malnourishment is so severe, it's endangering both your life and the baby's life. But back at home, nobody listened. It was a warning that, as we'll see, tragically, nobody paid any attention to.
And then it all came to a head over something so ridiculously small, cold food. Raghuveer came home drunk, flew into a rage, and just started beating her relentlessly. As she's on the floor, her only thought is to protect her stomach. She's begging him to stop, not for her, but for the baby. But he doesn't stop. He just keeps going, until she goes silent. And his parents, they just stood there and watched. Their reaction? Good, the trouble is over. Unbelievable.
And what they did next was just chillingly practical. There was no remorse. To avoid the police, to avoid any village gossip, they didn't even give her a proper cremation. No. Raghuveer just dragged her body out into the fields behind the house and buried her in a shallow grave, like she was nothing.
Okay, but that is not the end of Anjali's story. It's really just the beginning of a whole new, terrifying chapter. Because the power dynamic in that house, it was about to be flipped on its head, violently and supernaturally. Now, to get what happens next, you need to understand this really powerful concept in Indian folklore, the GARBHAVATI Atma. It's the spirit of a pregnant woman who died a violent, unnatural death. And in the lore, these are considered some of the most powerful, most restless spirits of all. See, her soul isn't just tied to the earth by anger and vengeance. It's anchored here by a mother's love that never got to be expressed.
And it didn't take long. Just 3 nights after they buried her, it started. First, the mother-in-law hears this faint sound of a baby crying in the house. The next night, villagers start seeing a weeping woman under that peepal tree. Then on night 5, the whole family starts hearing these agonizing screams. And finally, on the 6th night, the father-in-law sees it plain as day, an apparition of Anjali in the courtyard rocking a baby.
So as you can imagine, the 3 of them, Raghavir and his parents, are absolutely terrified. They get so scared that they start sleeping in the same room together, locking the door for safety, as if a locked door is going to stop a spirit that can literally rise from the grave.
And this is where we reach the climax of the story. The vengeance part? Oh, that was swift, and it was absolute. But getting peace? Well, for a spirit like Anjali's, that turned out to be a whole lot harder.
So one night, they're all locked in that room, and this freezing cold wind just blasts through. The locked door meant nothing. Anjali's spirit appears right there in the room with them, and before they can even scream, the life is just suffocated out of all 3 of them. A silent, terrifying end for their silent, terrifying cruelty.
So after the bodies are discovered, the villagers are freaking out. They call on a tantric, a holy man, who confirms exactly what they were all afraid of. It's Anjali's spirit, and she's buried out in the field. So they do everything they're supposed to. They dig up her body, give her the proper last rites she was denied. They offer up her favorite childhood items, all to try and bring her peace. But it doesn't work. None of it stops the haunting, because none of those rituals could give her the one thing she really lost.
And that's really the core of this whole legend. Her spirit was never just about getting revenge. It was about something she can never, ever have. And so, to this very day, people in the village say the ghost of Belpur still wanders. Her vengeance is finished, sure, but her love is totally unfulfilled. And that leaves her to ask the cold night air forever that one heartbreaking question: where is my child?